Hello, welcome to the Urban Manifesto. A crisis like the one that we're facing today offers an amazing opportunity to reset and work together towards a healthier, more equitable, and greener future. In the Urban Manifesto series, we outline these opportunities to learn and to unlearn old ways that have lost their relevance or downright have been unhelpful in this century. What we hope to do is to outline the roadmap for a progressive, resilient, and responsible urban change. The format of the show is very simple. It's a Q&A format, and we'd love to get your questions as well. But we start with a 3-minute manifesto with a 3-point agenda for action from our speakers. And we are so thrilled to do this in collaboration and partnership with the Architecture Foundation, where we are live streaming today. And this is part of their ongoing 100-day studio. I am Pratima Manohar. I'm the founder of the Urban Vision, which is a think do tank. And I'm excited to host this important conversation with my colleague, Lucy Bullivant, who's the founder of urbanista.org. Lucy?
Thank you, Pratima. Thank you, and welcome everybody. It's great to be back again on Urban Manifesto. We are delighted today to be exploring the vision and the identity of a major new piece of city, Meridian Water in Enfield in North London, which is being led and developed by the council. Enfield is taking a truly holistic and experimental approach to Meridian Water and creating an exemplar of public sector-led city making. Its values epitomize absolutely everything Pratima and I have each been advocating for with bespoke livable urbanism, in order that the ethos of thriving in an equitable way and being comprehensively sustainable can break through to become more mainstream, not the exception. So in this episode today, we're going to engage with what's at the very heart of this pioneering scheme, Meridian Water. We're going to engage with its drivers, with its aspirations, and exactly how it's being brought forward. So who better to do this with than our two splendid guests, playing pivotal roles in making it all happen. Peter George, Meridian Water's Programme Director, who is overall in charge, and Lisa Wu, head of Placemaking. Welcome and good to see you both, Peter and Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, hey.
Thank you.
You are members of what's approaching a 40-strong team at Enfield dedicated to the project, and you're collaborating with, 15 colleagues in the wider council team and around 150 multidisciplinary consultants. And I think that's a total of over 200 people working on Meridian Water. Quite a force to have with you indeed. And one that really clearly demonstrates the level of collective intelligence that complex city making needs today. So before we kick off with your scene setting manifestos, how we always ask all our dear guests, how have you each been managing during the pandemic? Peter.
Thank you. And thank you both for inviting us to speak about and explain our brilliant project, Meridian Water. And thank you for everyone who has dialed in to listen to hear Lisa and I talk. So I actually got the virus early in March. So I feel grateful to have made a full recovery. And since recovering from the virus, I've learned to appreciate my health a lot more, been doing a lot more exercise, but I've also learned to appreciate the simpler things in life and peacefulness.
That's we were very, very sorry to hear about what happened, and well, we're really, really relieved that you've made a totally full recovery. Thank you. I mean, that's brilliant. And Lisa?
Yeah, I guess it was a difficult time for many. So just even if I'm to focus on the positive aspects of the experience in general, is I live in central London, and there are always really exciting things going on, theaters, events, lectures, and new restaurants that you must try. So I guess there was always a sense of fear of missing out on what the London city has to offer. So I guess surely always feeling that sense of fear of missing out surely wasn't such a good thing for my mental well-being. So I guess it was in the lockdown, perhaps, that I've been healed from that fear, I guess, because everyone's under lockdown. That's one thing. But I guess it was a moment to perhaps purge on various aspects of my life and just prioritize. So I guess in that sense, it has been good for me, I think.
Well, it's great, really great to hear that you've found some positives in this really, really challenging situation. I'm very happy to hear that. Okay, so now we're going to kick off with our manifestos. 3 points, or maybe more than 3 points, but so long as it fits into 3 minutes. So we're going to start with Peter. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. So I've got a few slides that I just want to take everyone through, just to give you a bit of background to Meridian Water before I come on to our 3 placemaking pillars. So if we can go to the first slide, please. So just to give everyone a bit of context on where Meridian Water is, not least because not everyone's viewing this will be from England, never mind London. So the Meridian Water site, which measures 85 hectares in total, is in the London Borough of Enfield, which is the northernmost borough of London. So it's located in the southeast of England. The site benefits from proximity to a major park, the Lee Valley Regional Park. It benefits from 3 waterways and a north-south train line going north up into Cambridge and Stansted, south down into central London, Liverpool Street and Stratford. The history of the site has predominantly been industrial, gas holder sites and big box retail. And really the challenge for us at Enfield is to transform this landscape into a really successful development and new neighbourhood for 30,000 people in London. Next slide. So the council's been on the journey. So I've been leading the project for the last 6 years. When I took over, it was just moving from stage 1 to stage 2. So the first stage, the council simply put out a master plan and encouraged the private sector to step forward, buy up land and start delivering. But they were put off by the multiple risk of contaminated land, poor infrastructure, multiple land ownership. So I took over and started stage 2, which is the council as the enabler. So that was kind of de-risking the opportunity for the private sector and then selling all the land to a single developer. More recently, and most excitingly, we are now in the 3rd and final stage, council as the master developer, where we are now in control of the vision. We are buying up land. We bought 37 hectares of developable land. We're responsible for carving up land and selling them for residential and employment purposes. And we're also responsible for delivering infrastructure. And we've won £156 million from government to deliver the infrastructure backbone in the site. Next slide. Here's some of our priorities and aspirations for the site. The one that I'll just focus in on is a real top priority for us is for local people to be the principal beneficiaries of all of the growth that we deliver at Meridian Water. And we want to ultimately lift the adjacent neighbourhood of Edmonton out of the top 10% most deprived. Next slide. And this is really the kind of the placemaking manifesto for Meridian Water. This governs everything we do in terms of placemaking. So the 3 pillars of placemaking are, firstly, park life on your doorstep. So that's all about bringing the green and blue infrastructure, extending the Lee Valley Regional Park into each and every site at Meridian Water. So literally when you open your doorstep, you'll see a really green, lush and natural environment. Our vision and objective is for every single household to be no more than 2 minutes away from a quality piece of open space. The next objective, placemaking pillar, is mixing uses, animating streets. So this is all about making the ground floor the most vibrant of any ground floor development in London. What we want is 2/3 of the ground floor to be non-residential and for the council to own this space. So this will be really influential in placemaking the development, given how important the ground floor and the landscaping and the public realm is to how people feel and perceive a place. And then finally, in the middle, your place to make and create. This is all about the type of local economy we want to create. So at one end of the spectrum, there will be people making things for sale, and we've already got some progress on that. But then we also anticipate media sector, the tech sector, and a lot of kind of production happening. And we want there to be a literal window into production. Final slides. And this shows the master planning vision for how we want Meridian Water to come together over the next 25 years.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's very comprehensive, very coherent. No more than 3 minutes, was it? I think, yes. And that's a very good elevator manifesto. Wonderful. Thank you. So, Lisa, how about your manifesto?
Yeah, yes, as instructed, I prepared 3. But it was more, maybe a bit on the personal level after experiencing how cities have reacted to the pandemic. So I really reinforced the 3 key values, which I thought are particularly pertinent and important in these times of the difficulties that we're going through. The first manifesto is let's debunk the urban myth around density. There is a lot of debate going on at the moment about the downsides of density in cities, and some people are moving away from cities to suburbs, thinking it provides more access to nature and a bit of distance from people. So there is a movement where people are moving away from density and the cities. But I would like to say that what the evidence shows, if I'm to borrow findings from the recent World Bank report on building inclusive and sustainable cities in the pandemic recovery, that there isn't a correlation between the spread of the pandemic and the geographical densities which you're talking about. Geographical density purely in terms of population per square kilometers, or dwellings per hectare. So in fact, in some Asian cities with hyperdensity, they were actually better at managing the spread of virus very, very well. So this is a question, then how does density really react or correlate to the spread of virus? But the report did show that there is a correlation between the economic density and the spread of virus. So let me explain this point a bit more. In economic density here refer to also the environmental and also the social. So these densities also refer to then, in practical sense, things like the urban infrastructure and the amenities that comes with it, access to green space, and the level of decent income that people get. So all these factors are important part of the economic density that needs to be achieved in cities. And if there are shortfalls in a dense area of these economic densities, then those spaces start to become quite vulnerable. leading to overcrowding and very unsafe places in the durations of the pandemic. So my argument here is, let's not move away from densities, physical densities. Let's strive to achieve more densities physically, but also the economic densities. And let's, through design and placemaking, try to sustain those densities so that we can all, live safely and in a more livable environment with all the benefits that the cities can offer. So that's the first point. Second point is, let's seek first for nature-based solutions. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. If we work with nature, nature can bring back a lot. It can give us back a lot than we expected. So let me give you an example, maybe some extreme example, how they did in Curitiba is they hired the shepherds, gave them jobs, but asked them to bring their sheep into the city. And then the sheep will cut the grass, eat them, and then thereby they reduced emissions from gas-powered mowers. But also, it fertilized the ground. So those sort of benefits they gather from those nature-based solutions. I'm not asking that we should bring sheep immediately to Meridian Water, but we are looking into how our green spaces, the nature, can work hard to give us back a lot to the environment which we're creating. So I'll give you an example. Or the green spaces, rather than creating a destination park, we created a loop. 2 kilometers loop that goes around the development, which is accessible, literally accessible at your doorstep. So you're never 2 minutes away from a quality green space. But that green space does more than just being green and an open space. It has flood attenuation functions, and it deals with contamination issues, overheating, and it connects to the strategic biodiverse corridor, the eco corridor. So it radically improves biodiversity throughout the site. And it does address issues such as obesity and lack of exercise, because that walking that 2 kilometers around the site would be a physical challenge for somebody. It gives you a good level of exercise you need in a day. So altogether, with also flood mitigation measures, it does work really, really hard to give back a lot more to the site. So let's think about first what nature can bring to us and the environment and the value it can create, because I think there is numerous potential we have that's to be explored. Third manifesto. Next slide. It's about let's design for civility. So how you measure how civil the society is, with recent definition, is the extent of which there are systems and structures in place for those who cannot take care of themselves. So in that context, design can do a lot, or built environment can do a lot to facilitate that. So at any point in our lives, we are going to be at the receiving, at some point in our lives, I guess. We are going to be at the point at receiving end of care. So we'll need some care and we'll depend on care at some point in our lives. So to give you an illustration of how this can manifest, the picture on the left is just a default housing development. It looks, relatively built to good standards, brick finish, window, it's decent. However, for the person living in there with very limited mobility abilities, perhaps that's the most eventful thing that can happen in that person's life, looking outside the window and seeing people. Perhaps that's what it can offer. However, on the picture on the right, that's the development in Manchester, housing development in Manchester. Not necessarily a more expensive solution, and you can see it's not built to the highest specs possible, but little design considerations of creating these variations of spaces along the deck, and providing spaces on sunny spots or where people can grow plants, and it's wheelchair accessible. These little design gestures would be very empowering for those who has limited ability to move around. So these small to large design considerations, I think, can still be very, very empowering for those who is at the receiving end of care. And we can strategically do a lot in terms of our design processes, placemaking, master planning, to building more civility into our design. That's it.
Thank you. Wow, that's a wonderful trio. I think absolutely there are masses of myths around density, whether it's population density. People in London think it's, or people think London's population density is lower than it really is. But we had Larry Beasley, Mr. Vancouverism, the former chief city planner of Vancouver, on a few weeks ago, and his manifesto was absolutely about achieving livable density, which you're absolutely focusing, targeting. And landscape urbanism is the way to go, because it tackles landscape from the perspective of the city, human needs, and the other way around as well. So incorporate infrastructure, flood alleviation, human needs, biodiversity, the whole thing. And the intergenerational, the humane design, I guess you're defining this at, is really at the heart. Prathima, do you want to make a comment about the manifestos at this point?
No, I think thank you for sharing the vision for creating a new piece of a city like London. So I think you've covered the whole spectrum of how do you kind of decontaminate the land to how do you create civil, sustainable, resilient places. And I think those are the types of places we should be creating as we go forward into the post-COVID era, to build a more sustainable, more resilient, fun place to live in. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, right. So now we're going to kick off with our 5 sets of questions. So it'll be me and Prathima and Peter and Lisa alternating. So first question to Peter. Peter, you're passionate about doing regeneration with people as the principal beneficiaries, not for people. And furthermore, for you, how people feel about and sense Meridian Water project is totally integral to its success. So tell us, how are you going about fulfilling this promise, and what is your approach to collaborating in partnerships, as well as the building of a successful team?
Thank you for the question, Lucy. And as I kind of emphasised earlier when I was going through those slides, top priority for us, the Enfield Council, is to ensure that local people are the principal beneficiaries. And we believe that it's relatively unique to be designing such a major development, 10,000 homes, 6,000 jobs, a new neighbourhood of 30,000 people, estimated around £7 billion project around a single neighbourhood. But that is the mission, to ensure that we design the project in such a way that local people will benefit, and ultimately that we lift the local neighbourhood out of its deprived condition. So there are multiple ways in which we're going to do that. So I'll give you an example or two. So firstly, in terms of the housing that we're going to build, there will be a mixture of kind of market housing, but also affordable subsidised housing. And that's affordable housing that's got the key to improving the housing conditions for local people. So what we're going to be saying as part of the project is the new homes that get delivered from 2022, those homes that are affordable will be ring-fenced in the first instance to local people. So the local people of Edmonton will get the first opportunity to apply for the discounted rent homes and for the discounted market sale homes, so that they can step out of their sometimes poor housing conditions into brand new quality best practice housing conditions. The second example is we're ensuring that every single developer sets aside a sum of money which local people decide how that is spent. We call it a community chest. So we've asked our first partner to put £800,000 into that community chest, and for local people to decide how that money is spent on local priorities. And that chest will build and build as we sell land to different developers. We'll also ensure that when we are delivering jobs at Meridian Water, that not only are there employment opportunities, local people get the first chance to apply, but we also ensure that they'll benefit from apprentices and from the training in the skills academies that we're going to be creating. And finally, on local people, what we've had to do first, though, is to build trust. Because when we started talking to local people, when I started talking to local people a few years ago, what they said to me was, Peter, it all sounds great, this Meridian Water, but what does it actually mean for us? What is it going to do to change our lives? We are suffering from crime, from street cleanliness issues. Until you can change my day-to-day life, I'm not interested in talking about your big, grand plans for Meridian Water. So one of the things we've done at the start of the project is to invest money from our first developer partner, Vistry, into street cleaning. So there's now a street cleaning van driving around the streets of Edmonton, fully funded by Meridian Water. It's clearly labelled on the side of the van with investment from Meridian Water. And local people are now saying to me, actually, we can see that there's a difference already happening here. Our streets are cleaner, and the area is already becoming more livable. In terms of kind of partnerships and team that you also asked me to speak about, I take the view that it's impossible to effectively deliver projects of the scale and complexity of Meridian Water without a multi-stakeholder approach. And I personally lead and manage and maintain key relationships with our stakeholder partners. With the team, it's all about setting the right culture. So I'm a strong believer in a diverse team, being a strong team, whether it be gender diversity or ethnic diversity. I've been very keen to set a really high achieving tone to the team, dynamism, pacey, but also a no blame culture. I'm very open and transparent with information, and I like to lead by example.
Thank you. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I mean, to consider what is necessary from local communities' point of view is absolutely fundamental. I mean, local government innovation can be as brilliant as it possibly can, but it needs to factor in that very key issue at every step of the way. I love what you said about the partnership values and the teamwork building, team building. Building a team is not work; it's pleasure, really. But it must take an awful lot of effort and discipline at the same time. So thank you. So okay, Lisa, we built this event as having some substantial discussion about master planning, which is obviously a very key part of the process of bringing Meridian Water into being. So all of us here, we question the adequacy of purely narrow top-down master planning, which only draws prescriptively on old modernist ways or is obsessed with zoning and nothing else, as a way to respond to all of society's current ills, whether they be climate emergency, ecological degradation, inequality, housing crisis, health and well-being issues. So, for example, social isolation, and then also the reality of the evolution in lifestyles in the last few years. So what alternative approach, Lisa, are you taking to the proactive planning of Meridian Water? How are you ensuring that the different tools, the master plan, the strategies, say, for example, for environmental sustainability, have the necessary flexibility and they also work very well together?
I guess it's a big question. I could take all day to explain all the things we're doing. But I think I can explain about maybe an aspect of how we work. Now, what we definitely do not want to do is to segregate the disciplines and segregate the processes. What that means is, from my experience working also internationally on large-scale development projects, regeneration projects, and city-making projects, what I have noticed is often what can happen in large-scale projects is the segregation of different disciplines at different stages of development. I'll give you an example. Some things are good examples, but often what happens is, okay, we hire an architect, give us a vision, and once some sketches are done, then it goes to technical urban planners to draw up some efficient land plans, and then the highways engineer goes and draws up the roads, and the infrastructure comes with it, and then plot by plot basis, individual buildings come through. And some green space there, maybe a landscape designer can design. So it's been done in a compartmentalized way. Sometimes that drives efficiency. But what I have noticed is that then it does end up with, yes, building things, provides shelter, it achieves something. But I've noticed that often it doesn't really help address many of the pertinent issues and topics you just outlined, Lucy.
Yeah.
Our land and our built environment can do a lot more to strategically address these issues you've talked about. Yeah, issues of inequality, lack of opportunities, poor health. Our cities can do a lot more. So in that sense, that these are big questions to be answered, but I would say it would never be achieved if we work in a segregated way. Because not one discipline will have answers to all those questions, and not one person will have answers to those type of questions. So how we try to work on dealing with these big issues that Meridian Water also has to address in response to climate change and multiple deprivation, which the wider Edmonton area is going through. We start with a question, but we bring together multidisciplinary teams. For example, let me give you an example. For addressing things like how do we provide sustainable solutions to build our buildings, and how do we create a more carbon towards a carbon neutral and more affordable way of building things. So we bring cost planners from the very beginning of discussions alongside sustainability experts, for example. And things like how do we get people moving around in more safe and more empowered way for people with all abilities. We don't just talk to transport planners. We have to talk with the designers. We have to talk, of course, transport planners, but landscape architects. All this discipline needs to come together to answer those questions. So how we work together is, yes, through these bringing multiple disciplines, and we frame the questions and we follow through. So and even it's the green loop example, it wasn't a product of, let's say, just landscape designer solution to designing green space. No, it was a solution, part solution of a flood mitigation expert, is a part solution of transport, the place designers, and from environmental impact assessment teams, and from the landscape designers also, and architects helping define the enclosures of those building spaces, define what territory we need to work within. So it's a collective intelligence and problem solving that leads to these designs that gives us big value and long sustained value to the places and cities we make. So yes, I think the master planning process should very much be around bringing those collective intelligence together, multidisciplinary teams together, and asking the right questions, framing the right questions, and curating those design challenges throughout the way. So that is an aspect of master planning which is quite pertinent and relevant in 21st century city making.
Wonderful. That's a really impressive mindset to have as you carry on and to progress through the coming months and years. Brilliant. I mean, you've chipped into my mega question. I couldn't expect you to answer it in its entirety. We would need to have a whole seminar, a whole episode at least. But brilliant, fantastic. So Prathima.
Peter, I want to press a little bit about the way this development is taking place. Enfield is a local government authority, and for a local authority to take the master planning role and buy 37 hectares of land is not very common in UK, correct? We've seen this in places like Sweden, where municipal land is usually in public ownership to start with, and there's a big land bank that they already own and are responsible for developing neighborhoods. But this is a new model in various parts of the world. So tell us about why, what are the advantages of a local authority being the master developer, like in your case?
Okay, thank you. So I think the first part of this, and this is very much true of London, but this will be true of other major cities around the world, which is the more developed cities, all of the easier development opportunities have already been done. So, in these major cities, what is left is what Meridian Water kind of currently is, which is kind of old industrial land, which is seriously contaminated, really expensive to remediate, poor infrastructure. And what is the advantage? Well, the first advantage is, as we saw with Meridian Water, without the public sector taking this leadership role, nothing happens. The opportunity doesn't get unlocked, and homes do not get built. So I've been leading the project for 6 years, but for 5 years prior to my leadership, the council sought to entice the private sector to step in, but they were put off by the risk. So firstly, the advantage is the local authority can take the risk on the lock-in opportunities that the private sector is unwilling to take, but we're only going to take those risks if it's for our benefit. So the second point is, the second advantage is the only way we can effectively ensure that we can deliver our objectives and our priorities, which I've spoken about, is if we've got sufficient levers over the control of the development. So if you outsource the control to the private sector, then you are dependent upon that potentially single contract for delivering everything you want, and you're also reliant on that relationship with that partner remaining true and strong for a couple of decades. Here, we've got sufficient control to ensure we can deliver our priorities. Next point is, we also take a far more holistic view in terms of development value. So in our experience, too many developers understand the cost of everything and the value of nothing. We take a far more holistic view of value. Value for us is not just about land receipts, but we also benefit from the contributions that developers make to the local government to support local infrastructure. That money comes to us. We also benefit from increased council tax, increased business rates, and we also save money by being able to move people out of what we call temporary accommodation into permanent, affordable accommodation, which saves us money. We can also help, for example, by moving people into environmentally sustainable homes, so that will help them to save on their fuel bills, therefore tackling fuel poverty. The final point is, this approach, in addition to all of the control and advantages over design and placemaking, it also gives the council a greater financial return than we would have realised by outsourcing this all to a single development partner.
Yeah, I think it's great to know. And I think one of the most important component of this is obviously the capacity of the local government. And, and that's why places around the world struggle to do this. So it looks like there's been a ton of investment in that technical capacity within the team to deliver something like this. Is that different? Even from a UK perspective?
Yes, it is different. So firstly, we've invested to date 300 million of borrowed money into this development, and we're forecast to invest a total of £1 billion UK into this development, which we will recover in its entirety and make a return on investment. So it's unprecedented in the UK for that level of investment to go into a single development. But the only way in which the council has got the confidence to put that level of investment into a single project is because I've built a really strong team over the last few years, not just in terms of the team within the local government, but also the broader consultancy team. It's because we've got, you know, best in class expertise across the board that the council's got the confidence to invest.
Thanks. Lisa, I want to ask you about the amazing vision that you outlined about, you know, the master plan, and it was based on sustainable placemaking themes. And I especially loved the theme of park life in your doorstep, almost capturing your, you know, the kind of vivid landscape of the area and the environmental and well-being vision for the place. And you mentioned also the nature-based solutions for resilient infrastructure. So tell us about how well-being is being integrated into design and master planning for this project, and how has this pandemic impacted your thinking on the bigger idea of well-being?
Can we perhaps put the slide on a landscape solution back on? Maybe perhaps this might help facilitate this
I'll dig that
discussion. Up. Yeah. Yes. We had an early concept of a green loop, but we never really thought that we would really work hard to make this work if it wasn't for the pandemic. After experiencing the pandemic myself, how we get to appreciate the spaces, the local spaces we live in, just the immediate amenity spaces outside our homes, the shared spaces where we can meet other people, and the quality of parks that there is in a walking distance. So these spaces that they give is extremely empowering and very, very pertinent to our overall well-being and wellness. So it's given us a stronger steer to really see how these spaces are performing. Mm-hmm. You could see the green loop going around the site, and it connects the wider corridor in the Lee Valley. So we have been really trying to work these spaces up and to see how we can also address other civil engineering challenges we've got. So they are just 2 minutes walk from any given space on the site. And what it also does is starts to connect with key social amenities. So you walk around the place with no specific reason. Perhaps it can serve its function, but imagine it does connect to schools, so where you can walk your children, and it connects to a community center, a library, and a health center. So it starts to connect to those key facilities that you need and local services that you need. So that proximity and reachability is very, very empowering for people, especially if they have limited catchment areas, which they can be mobile on, especially for those functions. And to be able to just walk as a first choice. Did you know that people in England, on average, walk fewer than 9 minutes a day, including the time getting into the car to go to work? Yeah. So lack of physical exercise is a major national health issue. So for that reason too, we really thought about how do we get people to walk as their first choice, walk and cycle as their first choice. Therefore, it led to our design decisions to make sure these spaces are safeguarded, the green spaces are safeguarded. And just another dimension to add to this is those green spaces can be overshadowed. So you can make a decision to compromise where the shadowing happens, because you have to build dense, because we want to build in more homes, more affordable homes. But we laid out and reconfigured the spaces to make sure that you get the most pleasant amount of sunlight, microclimate in those spaces, so that wherever you are throughout the green space, it's very comforting in your body, and the microclimate is quite pleasant. So we have even thought about those microclimate issues and impact on those spaces, and those spaces have been a priority on defining the overall structure of the master plan framework.
I love the whole idea of social well-being and enabling social life. A lot of us don't think about social well-being, so
absolutely,
it's nice to hear that. And I agree with you. I think I just read a report which said that places which were car-centric had 50% more incidents of diabetes. So, walkability should be a public health policy, and we're seeing that actually. I think the CDC in America has actually been focusing on walkable cities as an agenda to beat diabetes. So it's nice to hear about the, planning and connected to health outcomes. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay, so we come to the topic of meanwhile uses now, which play a very significant role at Meridian Water. Now, the term meanwhile could be defined as the creative adaptation of existing structures and the introduction of new ones on a site to foster real life ahead of delivery of the rest of development. And they could be used for culture, they could be used for workspace, or a hybrid of the two, and even housing. And the imaginative way in which meanwhile is being done at Meridian Water, to me, at least, conveys quite how critical it is to the success of strategic planning today. So, Peter, in what ways is Meridian Water actually really redefining how meanwhile can contribute to placemaking and development?
Thank you for the question. So, yes, we do believe that Meridian Water's approach to meanwhile use is unique, certainly in the UK context. So firstly, meanwhile itself implies a degree of temporary. At Meridian Water, meanwhile could be leases of up to 15 years within the context of a 25-year project. So really, the purpose of meanwhile for us is the most vital role in transforming a industrial big box retail landscape from one that is inhospitable for people to live, to enable people to reimagine the place as somewhere where they would like to live or socialize and work. So we're looking at the assets that we have at Meridian Water, industrial buildings, for example, a lot of space, and we're repurposing those buildings to contribute to the placemaking and to initiate a culture-led regeneration program at Meridian Water. So I'll give you some examples of what we've been doing.
Oh, please.
So, for example, we have some large blue warehouses in the center of Meridian Water. We are working with a company called Vibration Group and a company called Broadwick Venues to repurpose those warehouses so that they're now there for live music, culture, filming. Last year we had a number of sellout shows, 100,000 people experience Meridian Water for the first time. So the very first experience of Meridian Water is the positivity of music and culture. Unfortunately, this year, COVID has been devastating for the cultural industries. We've all had to pause, but next year we hope to resume. We are also working with a local company called Building Blocks with a Q. We are, with money from regional government and from our own money, we are repurposing buildings to provide Europe's largest open workspace for the maker industry, where people can, on a pay-as-you-go basis, hire expert machinery to make things for sale out of wood, metal, textiles. We've currently got the drive-in cinema on the site for drivers, pedestrians and cyclists to watch films, live music, drag shows, a range of culture, really in response to this COVID moment, all socially distanced. And we're also looking to have film studios on site. In addition to the placemaking, it's really important for us to retain the pioneers. Ideally, the meanwhile will seed permanent employment and support our jobs target of 6,000 jobs. And importantly, it also generates a revenue to the council to fund essential services at the council at a time when the council's got less money than ever because of the cost of COVID.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for elaborating and explaining both the vision and the logistics. I mean, it's obviously culture is a formidable force to mobilize and to catalyze place in this way, and you're doing all the right things. Thank you. So Lisa, I think we're going a little bit back to city making again. But you are actually in charge of design quality. So here's a question about that. So the Aspirations for Meridian Water as a benchmark and an exemplar of public sector-led 21st century city making, they promise an inspiringly varied and integrated place at the same time. So how are you ensuring that the placemaking is a vital integral process for understanding what the site and the context-specific vision should be? How are you ensuring that that placemaking enables the highest standard of design quality across every aspect of the scheme? I know you've delved into this already. We know so far that it's extremely promising, but I think there's more to this story that we would really love to know about.
Yes, I like the way you mentioned these two words, ensuring and enabling. Mm-hmm. So just to draw back on when I talked about how we work together, I think an interesting and important aspect to mention here is that we are trying to borrow the benefits of technology. So what we are doing is we are gathering all this 3D information and public ground information and the performance information and data in a 3D platform, a digital platform. And that helps us work collaboratively. So what I mean by that is in all the workshops and meetings, we put those 3D models together. And these models are now, technology allows us to give us a sense of, if you build building over there, what does it do in terms of overall environmental impact or overall retail spaces you want to achieve on the site, or those things. So it gives you this immediate outputs. So it becomes a much more evidenced way of how we work together, and it does help enable collaboration. And also, what it really helps is avoiding segregation of disciplines, which I've mentioned, which has been a major burden or obstacle to good placemaking. So it enables that collaboration. No hiding of drawings, no hiding of information. So it's a true way of sharing knowledge and intelligence to achieve what's best for the site. So we've been working in this way. And it provides, and we're working to a technical solution that gives us the best output. That's great. And it will continue to evolve, amend, and improve in such a way. And we will use this platform in various fields and arenas. But there somehow is no point if you cannot then achieve those great principles and values that come out of that model, the design. So in that sense, you said about ensuring, that is absolutely key for placemaking. How do we ensure those great values and design principles are achieved? So this should be our art as a placemaking team or people employed in the council, in the local government, to achieve these things. So we influence various ways. Of course, just direct stakeholder engagement and relationship management is one thing, but through governance processes, through planning, and through also procurement. So we make sure that the briefs, if we go out to the market for, let's say, to employ, let's say, consultants or other, buy some services, we make sure that those principles are there and clearly communicated so that we lock these things through the procurement processes, including developers' appointments, that from the outset, they know what we're trying to achieve in overall master plan and where the key principles should lie. So they buy into that brief and the picture we want to achieve. So those things happen through that. And we work with the planning team. We influence area-based, place-based policy. And with the recent planning shakeup, I guess the role of design and the role of design codes will become even more important. So we should be translating those key principles through the design codes and using those as mechanisms, those area-based policies and design stances to lock in those important placemaking values that we wanted to secure. So that's the way in which we want to achieve and ensure placemaking.
Great, fantastic, and thank you so much also for addressing the the current shake-up of the planning system, which is affecting the role of design codes, and giving us confidence that you're going to ensure that these in no way compromised. It's just so helpful to have this kind of insight into the way in which you're approaching all of these things. So thank you very much.
Peter, we are in the age of transit-oriented development. It's been widely accepted that public transit infrastructure needs to be a key and almost an upfront part of planning and shaping cities and city neighborhoods. You have successfully delivered a new rail station at the Meridian Water site last year, ahead of building the different phases. How significant is the new station in helping the success of this development?
So the station is vital. We would not be able to build anything without the station. The development would be unviable. So not only does it unlock development potential, it also ensures that the third-party landowners who we want to build, Tesco's and IKEA, it also makes it viable for them to build. So we've delivered the station, but we're also to improve rail from 2 trains an hour to 6 trains an hour. And we're hoping for Crossrail to come and take us to 14 trains an hour. But even before the first homes are built, it's also been a game changer for local people. It's allowed local people to access jobs in central London in a way that they haven't done before. So it's pivotal.
And Lisa, I want to talk about this development in the context of the housing crisis, where there's a growing recognition of the need for diversity of tenure and typology to deal with the context of the world that we live in and to match people's living patterns. How is the scale, scope, and quality of homes being delivered in the coming years responding to the needs of the people and the changing reality of the society and economy?
Yeah, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of diversity in our environment, diverse tenures, diverse housing offer, diverse product, diverse neighborhoods, because diversity is ever so important, especially it's much more resilient to environmental shocks, the social shocks, and the market shocks. So for that reason, it's vital to sustaining our cities and adding resilience to our cities. So how do we achieve more diverse and more resilient environments? I think I can think about two big ways. Firstly, on the model of how we deliver. Initially, we thought about a master developer model where we procure a private developer and deliver the entirety of the site. But that was Peter mentioned that model didn't work out. So now we are the master developer of this development, but on a plot by plot basis, phase by phase basis, we develop a business case that requires approval from cabinet. What that business case is intending to do is create a housing offer that is relevant and that responds to the market needs at that point in time. So let's say a business case for a future phase at phase, let's say 7, may be different to what we're seeing now. It responds mostly and more dynamically to the changing needs of the society in terms of housing and the different housing offer that needs to happen. So this way of which we deliver, and the plot will have a different delivery model from one thing to the other, will add more diversity and more life and more resilience to the project. I guess also in the way we design. I mean, how we master plan, we really approached it in a contextual way, the understanding what does this site in this Upper Lee Valley got to offer? What is this uniqueness? What's this USP? What can it offer that maybe other developments may not be able to offer? So yes, it is on the places where the water courses converge. It's a flooded site, but how can we capitalize on the use of water in very different and exciting ways? So from this understanding the specificity of the nature and geographical context and socioeconomic context of the site, it gave rise to the overall master plan of how it looks and some different formations of neighborhood that exist within. We went further. We even looked at the site into a more micro neighborhood level. There are about 15 different micro neighborhoods on the site, and the designers and the civil engineers has all looked further to see what distinct type of environment that can arise from within this micro neighborhood context, informed by a very distinct geographical landscape, which is structured within. So one micro neighborhood will have a very different character to the other, and we'll even have a different build cost benchmarks, because maybe some area will be more premium than the other, some area will be more appropriate for pioneers than the other. But this diversification of product will help, for example, respond to market saturation, for example. There can be, I mean, the market slowdown can be an issue, the saturation can be an issue. If you have all these products on sale, they can be an issue. Many cities are going through those challenges. So how do we diversify those things? And we want people with various incomes to be cohabiting, not the homogeneous level of income groups. I mean, that's not diverse. And one of the core placemaking principles is really that vibrant public realm we want to achieve, like citing the vibe we want to continue, and dynamism we want to achieve in Meridian Water can only happen through that true mix of income, mix of tenure, and mix of products. So that's how we are approaching diversity in the development.
Yeah, it'll be an exciting place to live in once it's built. And I wanna say hello to the community that is joining us from all over, from Urbanista's platform, the Urban Vision, and the Architecture Foundation. Thank you. And if you have any questions for our two speakers, please just comment on the video link below and we will relay it to them. Lucy?
Okay, yes. So while you're gathering your ideas and thoughts and for questions, let's carry on with some more mega questions. Right. Okay. So Peter, both of you feel very strongly that the intimate integration of uses makes the most interesting of places from an urban design placemaking perspective. And that is reflected in Meridian Water's mixing uses and animating streets placemaking theme. So in taking a cross-sectoral approach to socio-economic spatial outcome, in order to enable a whole new microeconomy, as you've termed it on previous occasions, how are you creating Meridian Water as a viable employment destination, making the most of ground floor usage? And how will this furthermore help catalyse change in the surrounding economies?
Okay, so firstly, we've recently published our employment strategy, Your Place to Make and Create. And the objectives that we've set ourselves in that strategy is that we want to achieve 6,000 permanent jobs, 1,000 meanwhile jobs, 1,000 construction jobs, and we want at least a quarter of those jobs to be benefiting local people, and as many of those jobs, employment opportunities, to be benefiting local businesses. And the real priority here is for higher value jobs. There is employment in the area, but it's predominantly a low wage economy, which is just compounding the deprivation in the area. So we want to attract higher value sectors. But how do you do that? Well, you cannot do that right at the start of the project. You cannot do that until you change the dynamics. You cannot do that until you've delivered some infrastructure. So not only do we need to deliver the physical infrastructure backbone, but as Lisa has mentioned, we also have to think about the employment offer for employers. So the park life on your doorstep is also really important here. We have to think about a health and well-being offer. We have to think about a culture offer and what the food and beverage is going to be like. So it'll take us a few years to create the physical and the social infrastructure for this to be a viable employment opportunity. Once we've done that, then we'll strike a balance between kind of sectoral targets and opportunism. So we've already identified media, culture, tech, education as being sectoral targets, but clearly, if a major company, high quality jobs, wants to relocate to Meridian Water, of course we will be opportunistic and seek to accommodate that. And finally, on the ground floor, as I've said, the council will be owning the ground floor. That's an opportunity to incubate small, medium-sized enterprises so that they can, over time, grow into large, successful companies that can be paying the salaries we want at Meridian Water. And if we're successful with this, we think it can create an economic shockwave in the locality and catalyse economic growth in the region.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think the next question for Lisa is about something you did really quite recently, which is the Meridian Water's Ideas competition just this summer, which attracted some very exceptional team entries, you could see. And the whole point behind it was staged to stress test the triple bottom line of social, ecological and economic aspects of the new Meridian Water sustainability strategy. And I guess that also, Lisa, includes the focus that the economist Kate Raworth puts in her Donut Economics book, and she puts at the heart of her movement on this idea of coupling regenerative design together with redistributive economies. The reason I'm mentioning Kate Raworth is that she is actually cited as an inspiration in the Meridian Water sustainability strategy. As you know, I know the competition is still in progress and process, so you can't tell us all the ideas and the results yet. But what did you think? What did you make of the ideas in the entries that came in?
Well, I was very, very surprised with the level of the quality of submissions from all the bidders. And we have shortlisted 7. So I guess to just further add to why we went about this approach, it reflects the things I've mentioned about, how we should be master planning, how we should work placemake. It's a big challenge, climate change. And sustainability is a major challenge, and especially the donut economics theory shows, how do you then work within the realms between the social foundation and environmental ceiling. Social foundation should not be compromised as a consequence of these visions. So we have to work within those realms. But there is a big challenge to solve. So we never thought let's say one of us or one architect or one company can provide the solutions, or even just within our team. We wanted to reach out to the collective intelligence in the sector, in the industry. So it was a call out for ideas and solutions. So it was a knowledge piece. It was never meant to be, let's say, can you design a beautiful building? Never. It was never intending to do this. We wanted to see how we take this big challenge forward. So we started with firstly then asking, okay, give us a big idea based on where Meridian Water sits in its strategic context, geographical context. Give us a big idea. Yeah. So we saw some really exciting ideas come through. Then we shortlisted 7 schemes. And what we did ask them then is, okay, big idea is great, but how would you translate this in delivering this big idea in a very typical block? The reason why we asked for a typical block was for scalability. Is this process then can we really apply and deploy in various in typical development sites and the ones that are relevant to Meridian Water? So we have asked for that, and we had some very, very interesting ideas. Especially we rated how the teams were put together, because as mentioned before, we see a value in very different, unusual teams coming together to solve these problems. Because again, one discipline cannot answer all the questions to these pertinent issues. So we were looking at how the teams were put together, and we asked for, okay, great, these ideas, how will it be delivered? What are the ideas? And does it really even stack up financially? It was a big brief, but they came up. People came up, and the teams came up with the solutions. So to be announced, but what this intelligent piece of work will help inform us, it informs the new model of delivery that is ever so sustainable and will, as I mentioned before, achieve those economic densities that a site can achieve, and social densities and environmental density in very, very unique and special ways. And the team will, when they're appointed, help inform developing the business cases, and will provide us with this knowledge offer on the future sites. So we're seeking to take forward the schemes for the deliverability, to deliver the future phases through this. So the learning point is this: this should be the way we should work in the future. We should engage, and I'm ever so excited about now the next realms of our master plan. The next stage is to actively engage to the digital platform, civic communities, business communities, to help inform and shape the master planning and the schemes that come forward. Because with that, I could see immense amount of opportunities and possibilities. So I'm really, really looking forward to the next stage of the master plan through civic engagement and more participation from the communities.
Wow. I really love the idea of competitions within the context of, more competitions, conceptual type of competitions in the context of such a development, because I think that they really help to ground and to give a platform for democratic design. The amount of shared information, shared knowledge, the sharing, this is relating to what Peter was saying in his answer earlier, is already awesome, and I just think it's going to carry on being phenomenal in the coming years. You've got the idea of a generative culture. You can be able to create something that's never people will be learning from each other in such an awesome way. So thank you.
My final question, Peter, to you is what's coming up next? Tell us about what you're aiming to achieve over the course of the coming year. And tell us also about what fulfilling those goals will enable in 2022 and beyond.
Thank you. So 2021 is all about the year that Meridian Water begins to transform itself. So from next year onwards, there will be construction activity for every year on Meridian Water for the next 25 years. So what's exciting me at the moment is the fact that next year, Vistry will be on site building the first 950 homes. We'll have a major tier 1 contractor on site building infrastructure works, new roads, bridges, parks, cycle routes. We'll be opening building blocks is Europe's largest open makerspace. We'll be opening film studios. And we'll also be launching our next 2 residential opportunities, what we call Meridian 3 and Meridian 4. So Meridian 3, we're looking for partners to deliver co-living and student accommodation. And Meridian 4, exciting development for the project. The council's stepping into the developer's shoes. So in addition to being the master developer, with Meridian 4, we're also fulfilling the role of the developer. The council will therefore be responsible for delivering the planning through the REBA stages, and we will be responsible for appointing the contractor and delivering it on a design and build basis. But what I'm also really excited about in the very short term is this Friday, I get to see my team for the first time since the pandemic begun. So I'm really looking forward to being reunited with the Meridian Water team.
Wow.
Great.
So,
yeah, I think this was such a great conversation, and I want to thank both of you for, sharing the details of the vision plan and details of design with all of us. Thank you.
Did we rustle up any audience questions? Maybe we've dealt with all of them by being so.
Yeah, I guess so, because we've been asked any questions yet.
Not so
No.
Well, it was truly illuminating. I mean, you've set yourself on such a heroic task, a course of action, and all the ways in which one could think about mitigating the risks involved with such an endeavor. I think you've come up with such plausible. I mean, we can't discuss every minute piece of the economic nitty-gritty, but I mean, the whole kind of cultural vision of it is just really impressive. So we must pay tribute to your vision and your heroic figure, and we really will follow Meridian Water, both of us, and see how things go. We firmly believe that it's going to be phenomenally successful.
Yeah.
Because of the power of collective intelligence, if nothing, I mean, that's one of your pieces of ammunition, I think, is very undoubtedly the case. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for giving us the opportunity to explain the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was really great to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you, and join us next week, next Tuesday, as we futurecast on Urban Futures. Thank you all.